Mixing with Mike plugin of the week comes from Pulsar Modular. It's Q Sahara. Q Sahara is a plugin that is primarily based off a plugin we did a review on a few bits back, a couple months ago, called the P19 Igloo. And so it's a recoil compressor, just like that one. It's very much designed like in an 1176 kind of style, although there are some significant differences. One, this is a feed forward style plugin, and the 1176 is a feedback style plugin, meaning that the output post gain reduction circuit would feed a little bit of that signal back into the sidechain, which would kind of, change the characteristic of the release, usually adds a bit of a warming kind of quality to it. This is a feed forward style. And the feed forward style will just go in, whatever the settings are, it will adapt and, apply settings accordingly, and the signal will move on forward directly to the output. Now, in its basic design, there's a lot of really cool features here. The idea of the Q, which stands for quick, is that there will now be a series of plugins coming from Pulsar Modular that will be more simplified in terms of their design, right? So in terms of the layout of this particular plugin, you have a ratio, attack, release, input and output, and a wet-dry control, sidechain filter, right? So giving you all the basics that you would need for primary compression. And you'll see a gain reduction meter up at the top. One of the things that Pulsar Modular does really amazingly well, which I really love, is the sophistication of their VU metering. It'll have multiple needles. The black one will show input level. The red one will show output level, so you can match them accordingly. You'll see peak levels, right, up at the top, input and output. Down at the bottom, you'll see RMS levels, input and output. That's actually there. And, so you get that, and you get the gain reduction metering up at the top and a number that will kind of flash what's going on with it. As you go through the ratio settings here from 1.5 to 1, it starts in many designs like the 1176 have this as well, where the 4 to 1 ratio is a soft knee, but as you progressively go up to 20 to 1, it gets a progressively harder knee. Same type of principle here. So the attack, you can get a more aggressive style of compression. Not just that there's more gain reduction or higher ratio, but also the knee itself. And so you may find if there's more dynamic material and you wanted it to be a little bit more natural sounding, the compression, go to a lighter ratio. If you want a more aggressive sound, start to bleed into the higher ratios, and that will give you the more aggression, sharper attack, or sharper corner on the attack, which is, think of the knee as kind of rounding or a softening of the front edge of the transient, and the attack time sort of more or less the control of the back end of the transient. That may be one way to kind of think about it. It's a little bit more easier to understand. Now, there are no numbers here, right? So when you see the numbers here, it'll just go from minus 100 to plus 100. So there's nothing there in terms of milliseconds. So the idea here being that you're working by ear, right? And that you're working to find attack and release settings that sound good as opposed to being attached to a particular number. Tying the release time to, musical values. This way you can sort of shape the sound by feel. And that's and if you're into that type of thing, and you get that sense of it or the feel for it with the compression, it becomes an important way of kind of drawing the right amount of energy out of any given sound that you feed into it. Wet dry control is pretty straightforward. The input and output can be linked together by holding the shift key. So if I hold the shift key, it will simultaneously turn down the output or turn up the output as I bring the input level down. So I can set the amount of signal passing into the fixed threshold accordingly. And it has a pretty low fixed threshold. The 1176 has a very low one, and this one is sort of mimicking that. So when you put the plugin on, most likely you're going to get gain reduction immediately. And so you can just sort of feel it right away, as opposed to it going in and it not doing anything or barely trickling, and then you're kind of having to, start by getting input level. But that shift function is a really important one. High pass filter, pretty straightforward. This will just cut off basically frequencies below the selected frequency there, just to kind of help. Often this will help you to kind of shave off some of the sustain energy from the signal. So if you want more responsiveness from the compression and you want the transient to be primarily triggering it by rolling off the low end, you may have to raise your input, right, and lower the output simultaneously to kind of get it through threshold. But you'll get the signal triggered more by the transient energy than by the sustained energy. So that's an important way of kind of detailing out the way the compression works. You have a bypass control here, phase inversion, external sidechain, right? So you can key it externally. That works there. The sub button is an interesting one. What this does is there's a natural or built-in 20 hertz high pass filter that's automatically on the circuit. So even if this is out, and if you select this here, it will bypass that. And sometimes that's helpful to kind of allow the sub frequency energy of like a low end bass or an 808 or something to kind of resonate through. So that's just like A/B it, check it out. I'll have it on the bass track here, and we'll see what that does. There's also oversampling with 3 different modes. In vintage mode, it basically just operates without any anti-aliasing, right? So what you're getting is no oversampling, any saturation that occurs or any artifacts or aliasing artifacts that occur, it will just be allowed to kind of pass through. The next setting here is intelligent mode, which doubles the sample frequency. So if you're at 48 kilohertz, it'll make it 96. And the HD mode, which will add 8 times the sample rate. If you're at 48 kilohertz, whatever that is, 384, something along those lines. So you can go through the different modes there. I have most of these in HD, and it actually does make a significant difference. So it's worth checking out. Then there's the hammer. Now the hammer, the way that it's described is what he calls a halo effect, right? So it's optimized for voice frequencies. So the frequency energy around the voice. Now, I'm not sure if this is specific to the sidechain filter, like this is sort of filtering out. So the sidechain is triggered by the frequencies that are kind of centered around the voice, sort of bandpass filter on higher and lower frequencies, not exactly sure. Or whether it's something where the compression is applied more within that range. That I'm not clear about. Most likely a sidechain filter. That will probably get answered by someone in the comments below from Pulsar Modular, I hope. I'm not sure. I don't know. So anyway, that's the. Otherwise, it's really like great, very much like the Igloo, but a more simplified version. Very quick and easy to use. So let's kind of go through a quick audio example just to kind of do this here. Now, I do have a channel strip up here, but this is only doing, there are no compressors in on that. It's just doing equalization of the track. And then there's some reverb returns over here. Let's get a basic idea, though, of what it sounds like, and then we can kind of go through some individual sounds with it.
I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us who may be easily deceived. They're building cars that drive themselves now, sending civilians into space. They got experts on the TV and the radio, presenting the facts for one side of the case. And as I sit here by the fire, as our ancestors used to do, I can't help thinking I would give anything to still be so confused by the moon.
Right, right, so probably a little bit more makeup gain on some of the tracks here than the output, but you can definitely hear like the presence energy that it kind of brings in. A lot of it is because I'm working with some faster release times that will usually help to kind of shake things up a bit. Let's start with the vocal. I always start with drums, so let's start with the vocal and kind of go through this a little bit. What I had here was just sort of like thinking 1176 style, which also doesn't have numbers. So I'm not sure how much this is modeled because all of those attack settings are like less than a millisecond. Like the slowest setting is like 800 microseconds or something, so it's not even a millisecond. But the shape of it and everything with the knee makes that less aggressive sounding, right? And the very low threshold does that. So I'm not sure where that stands. I don't think that's the way this is laid out. It sounds to me like the attack is definitely slower than that, but I could be wrong about that. But just kind of shaping it here, I was thinking slower attack, faster release, just to sort of articulate the voice a little bit. Light ratio, just to kind of manage the dynamics of it a little bit. And this also has the hammer mode in here. So I wanted to start just by opening this up, playing a little bit, and kind of going through some of the different options here, right? Just to kind of show you what's going on. So we'll start with the hammer mode.
I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us who may be easily deceived. They're building cars that drive themselves now, sending civilians into space.
So this does a great job, actually. Like you see, there's like a bit less gain reduction in there with this in. So it's definitely filtering out a lot of the low frequencies. And it actually, I'm not sure if I would describe it as a halo, but it acts more responsive to more balanced response in terms of the way that it's working or wrapping around the vocal. Not letting the low frequency energy kind of drive it as much. And it's probably a bit more than just, doing a high pass filter, because that would be the other way to basically kind of get around that and find that, cutoff frequency that helps you to kind of dial it in a little bit better. An alternative approach, right, we could copy this to B, would be to go to a faster attack and a longer release.
I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us who may be easily deceived.
So all of this is at a light ratio, kind of soft knee, but let's just hear this A beat in and out.
I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us who may be easily deceived.
And we'll go back to the original settings.
They're building cars that drive themselves now, sending civilians into space. They got experts on the TV and the radio, presenting the facts for one side of the case.
So this is a great example of where you might take a different approach for like a harmony part or a double or something that you kind of wanted to stage a little bit back where it feels a little bit more contained, but then you have more of the transient cutting through and a bit more of the movement on the lead vocal, right? That way you can sort of stage them a little bit, offset from each other so they don't conflict with each other too much. Pretty straightforward and really good. One of the things, just so you can get the sense of quality here with the different oversampling types, this is vintage, and I'll switch through them. You'll hear the difference. Might be a little click in there as it switches.
I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us who may be easily deceived. They're building cars that drive themselves now, sending civilians into space. They got experts on the TV.
Right, so really great. Like, I really love that HD mode. Like, just the definition and the accuracy of the compression, and the beauty of it really, really comes through. So a really cool one. Let's move on to a couple of other instruments here. Piano, right? So here I have a faster attack, but also a kind of a fast release, just to kind of warm that up a little bit. Again, kind of I'm leaning towards the lighter ratios here because, and I'll kind of show you the drums with a more aggressive approach. But let's see. So I went to the lighter ratio here with the softer knee just to sort of soften up that attack a little bit, just to kind of keep it from being a little edgy, kind of give it a little bit more of a natural kind of tonal character. And just so that ability, just with the simple thing, with the ratio is really like a very simple and brilliant way to kind of go about it. Just thinking about your ratio, not just for how much gain reduction but the aggressiveness really comes from the knee, as much as it does from, how aggressively the compression is kicked in by the higher ratio setting. Here's a guitar part where I'm going with a very fast attack and a fast release just to kind of soften it. And part of the reasoning for that was just sort of cutting down a little bit on the transient to just sort of soften it, kind of bring the transient a little bit closer to the sustain so I could mix it back, not have it as forward, right? So that's just like one other way to do it. I could also slow down the release. That would kind of, give a slightly different character. Let's go to the bass here for a second. And with the bass, I put the sub thing in. So let's just check that out to kind of A-B the setting there. Here, I wanted this because it kind of plays some nice little melodic themes that sort of run behind the vocals. So I kind of have this working with a slower attack and a faster release time just to kind of get it to breathe a bit more so those stand out in front of the drums. In this case, that's very subtle at best. If you're thinking about using this on lower frequency information, probably if you have more like a sub-bass type of sound, 808, something along those lines, that might come through a bit more clearly. But just based on the range that the bass part is in, that's probably less going to have less of an effect. Let's go through to the drums. I just want to kind of show a bit of the knee characteristics because I pretty much have everything like on a lighter setting ratio wise. Again, just sort of leaning a little bit into stylistically what this would, what this sounds like, or the stylistically the music itself not being overly aggressive. But let's kind of dig into it a little bit more with the drums here. Right. So you could see how you can, really get aggressive and kind of dig into the sound and then, go through your wet dry control, mix some of that in if you just wanted to bring like a little bit of an edge to the sound. Right. Again, not probably stylistically appropriate for what we have here, but you could also see the power of that sidechain filter and how it allows you to just sort of dig in and kind of change the texture of the way that the compression is applied to the drums overall, so you can sort of focus on the type of saturation that you might be looking for. And it's a really cool way to kind of dig in, get some more interesting tones than just sort of the standard kind of all buttons mode type of thing, which sort of is very limiting in terms of the shaping qualities. So you could hear how that, that ratio makes a huge difference, right? Obviously, if you go 40-1 in anything, it's going to flatten a lot of things out. But, also with the sub filter, the sidechain filter, gives you a lot of tonal options. Really great one. A very affordable one. Pulsar Modular always makes amazing plugins. So having a series of plugins that are more affordable and available and sort of give you, the primary feature sets of existing plugins. I assume that's what will be happening going forward. It's a welcome addition to the plugin world, and this is a really cool one. I'm not sure exactly, because it's like the P19 Igloo. This is sort of the opposite. Sahara being the desert, hot, cold. I'm not totally sure of the connection there, but I dig the plugin, and I guess that's the bottom line. So there you have it. Plugin of the week from Pulsar Modular, Q Sahara. Definitely worth checking it out. Download a demo today, dig into it, play around with it. I think you'll end up buying it.